Hello and welcome back to Fellonius Yapping About. It's time to talk about something big. Yes, the North Atlantic Pact. The military pact out in the North Atlantic. That actually isn't that much about North Atlantic anymore. It's more or less all over the planet. NATO started as some sort of keeping the Russians out, the Germans down, or something like that. No, the Americans in, the Russians out, and the Germans down. 1949. Normally, I don't think there are that many normal people who think about NATO at all. NATO is some sort of pact, has to do with defense. They say. But to me, it's more or less the biggest defense or military thing we have on this planet. And since most of it is American, I would say that the American military is probably the one that is in there. Among the world's collected military economy, 69% goes to the NATO and 35% alone is from America. What is then about this NATO thing? Well, there is a guy called Putin. He is some sort of president in Russia. He sits in Moscow and, he says things, he threatens, and he has a bit of things to say. Suddenly, there are people in Sweden who thinks that Putin is a threat. You have to look at it this way. Sweden has been neutral for about 200 years. Now, that's something that we are not really true, because when it was Second World War, we helped the Germans in the beginning of the war, and then we helped the British and the Americans in the latter part of the war. We really did something. We also made sure in the latter part that our Swedish steel got over to British side. Not much of it, not much at all, because the Germans had fixed Denmark and Norway. We had to sail in between, but we did some. But we were never really neutral during the Second World War. But since then, we have always claimed to be neutral. On the other hand, most of the Swedish people are living like they are the 52nd state of USA. So I'm not saying that we are neutral because of that either. But officially, we are. Now, suddenly Sweden is so afraid of Putin, and I don't understand why. They are literally trying to force the Swedish people into accept NATO as a part of our life. Now, you have to see it a bit further back. Sorry to do this, but this is how it is. Back in somewhere around 2004, 2005, we stopped to have an army. We have like 10, 15 aircraft. We have like 7 boats. We don't have conscription anymore. We are actually trying to hire our soldiers. And they don't want to come and work as soldiers, which is a bit strange. It's mostly a technical stuff to be a soldier today. You don't go around in trenches and try to wait 6 months to throw a grenade. You just sit inside a bunker and do everything electronically. And at the same time, we always considered Sweden to be safe, because as long as we are not on either side, there's no reason to attack us, because if we are attacked from either side, the other side will attack back. Or at least that's what we thought. Now, there is a little island in between Russia and Sweden. That's called Gotland. Now, once upon a time, Russia claimed that Gotland was their island. But, well, back in 1500s something, we have had that island and it's been ours, more or less, except for the people on that island, because they think it's their island. If you could put atomic weapons on that island, it would be like Cuba. You remember the Cuba crisis, you remember the Pig Bay and all that. Exact the same situation would then be on Gotland, except for the fact that the whole of Sweden will be dragged in. And the northern Sweden is actually neighboring both Norway, who is NATO, and Finland, who is actually helping both sides as much as they can. They have some working agreements with Russia, and they have the Nordic cooperation with the rest of the Nordic Scandinavian countries. So Finland is actually more neutral than anything else on this planet, except for Switzerland. So the point is, both sides want to put atomic weapons on Gotland to secure the peace. Now, for me, it's just the opposite. If anyone puts anything on Gotland, that will be war. But the Swedish people are saying, nope, that will be peace. But we are having peace at the moment, and Putin isn't interested in attacking Sweden. And by the way, if you want to attack Sweden, it will take about 15 minutes. You just throw some rockets on our electricity stuff. We have a couple of nuclear power plants you can wipe out. There's some water stuff up north. If you just put, let's say, 3 or 4 of them on the right spot, you will totally darken the whole Sweden, and then you can just go in and get it. There is no defense at all. At all. And that counts for anyone who has a small army of 200 persons or something. So it's no use, it's no big deal. But for me, if Sweden becomes part of NATO, that's the end of any talk about neutrality. We are not neutral anymore. And if Putin puts his things on Gotland, then we are at war. So that's my point on NATO. But for most people, it's just something that happens away from everything. The big problem might be later on if the Swedish government decides that NATO is good. They are not going to let us, the people, decide on that. And by the way, the lobbyists has scared most people to accept anything that is from America anyway, so we'll probably be NATOists. I don't like it. I really don't like it. I wish that NATO wouldn't be existing anymore, because it's not really needed since the Cold War isn't on. But it's still there, and it threatens some people like North Korea and Putin. Now, do you ever think about NATO? Is that something that is in your grasp, your everyday? To me, it's just a threat at the moment. Next 6 months, and perhaps it's not. I don't know. Now, that becomes a long one. Sorry to say that. Bye.